Hello one and all, welcome back to ArcheAge Inspiration. Today's rolls are 6, 7, and 0. Got some pretty high up ones there, so let's see what we got. 0 is Vitalism, of course, 6 would be Witchcraft, and 7 would be Oromancy. And that makes us into a Heirophant. Alright, let's see what the Heirophant can do. So what I have for the Heirophant here is a versatile spellcaster slash emergency healer that I think actually could work very well for both group play and 1 versus 1 situations. I think this build's actually pretty solid. Maybe not these specific choices, but I think Witchcraft, Vitalism, Oromancy have some pretty good synergies that could really do quite well. First, we'll take a look at Oromancy here. We have Thwart. Thwart is used to build up Inspire stacks. Inspire stacks, of course, give you an attack speed boost, which lowers your global cooldown, meaning that you can use a lot of your abilities in more rapid succession. Teleportation is taken for maneuverability as well as liberation to prevent you from being shackled and silenced. And Conversion Shield and Shrug It Off round off a good defensive suite here. Do note also that while Conversion Shield is up, it not only gives you a 42% reduction in magic damage taken, essentially, but it also makes the cast time on Antithesis be reduced to 0. Just cast instantly. Quite nice when you're trying to heal yourself. If you're in an emergency situation where you need to heal, I would advise throwing on a healing weapon, of course. Pop Conversion Shield to also help further mitigate any damage coming in, and then run away while you're using Antithesis and Fervent Healing on yourself. If you're keeping up your full Thwart stacks for Inspire, they also reduce the cooldown for Antithesis, which will actually allow you to usually use Antithesis while moving, Fervent Healing yourself up with all 5 stacks, and then Antithesis again. In addition, we do have some extra healing here. When you have your spellcasting weapon on, you'll be able to use Enervate, Earthen Grip for its excellent utility, and of course the snare, which I think is actually a really important part of this build. I would highly recommend using this snare aggressively, meaning that once you have the snare, do not let it go like too easily, too quickly. I would advise getting out to a good amount of range and using Skewer. Skewer has a 25-meter range to the center of the template, let alone the actual area of effect, which is a 5-meter area, so you can actually hit this from a very long distance. So by using this, you can gain a large amount of space and break the crowd control on your own terms. If you do break it, you have a few options to reestablish. You have Insidious Whisper. You, of course, have Bubble Trap, and Banshee Wail for when they get close, as well as Focal Concussion for when they get close. One point that would be kind of nice to have would be the cooldown reduction for Witchcraft. This build doesn't really have a spammable attack and is more cyclic in its nature in terms of how it deals its damage through a war of attrition rather than just all in a big burst, although we do have a few burst elements such as Dahuta's Breath. So if you can manage to get Enshroud, you could certainly do it. One thing you could possibly do is buff yourself with Aranzib's Boon, respec out of Aranzib's Boon, and put the point into Enshroud instead. Certainly possible to do that. Just keep a point there, and then just, whenever you need this, you could say, here, I'll just show you how to do it, I guess. Put the point into Enshroud, and then say, just grab Aranzib's Boon, I guess is what you should do. Just grab that, buff yourself and your party members, and then respec right back out of it. It'll cost you a few silver each time, but it will essentially save you a point. Anytime you have a buff like this, you could use that exact trick, but it's kind of up to you. It does cost a little bit of money, and I do kind of like to have all those abilities, stationary and set every time I play whatever class it is. But that is one of the things you can do with this skill system is cast a buff and then respec out of it, and you'll still actually have it. So as far as some of the combos that this goes, we'll go into those here in a little bit. Most of the stuff is pretty standard, Enervate, Earthen Grip, but there are a few other things that you can make use of that I'd like to mention right now. So while not technically a combo, I think one of the greatest strengths of this build is its ability to completely strip the opponent out of all of its buffs. In fact, I'm fairly certain that this is the absolute best 3-class combination for removing and otherwise debuffing a target. What you can do is you can Focal Concussion, which removes a buff. Follow that up with a Leech, which sleeps, and also has a very high chance to steal a buff. Now, unfortunately, I don't think there's any way we can actually inflict a slow to get the additional combo effect, but if you can manage to get it somehow, and again, I'm not sure there's any way to actually do it, you could get a second one, which would be nice. And then while the target is slept, you can purge another buff off of them, as well as use Mirror Light to purge another buff off of them, in addition to snaring them and, of course, decreasing their healing received effectiveness and all that kind of stuff. So, pretty nice little combination of abilities to remove buffs and all that. One of the things you have to be very careful with your Leech, which is something that I just showed off right there, is that unfortunately it will often make you auto attack when you do it. So you have to be very careful about using it. I usually try to mitigate that by using it and then very quickly turning away. Doesn't always work. You could also try using it and then immediately hitting escape to drop your target, which could work sometimes. But just be aware that that is something that could often come up when you're trying to do any of your debuffing and combos and all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, most of the combinations are pretty straightforward. I'll go ahead and explain them very quickly anyway. Enervate into Mudhand is pretty standard stuff. Enervate, of course, does extra damage against the target that is feared or stunned. So if you've managed to open up with an Insidious Whisper on somebody, following up with Enervate will do an extra amount of damage. The Earthen Grip will then combo and do a large amount of extra damage as well. Dealing 141% magic damage to enervated targets and returning it as health. So quite powerful. In addition, if the target is already snared when you use Earthen Grip, you'll actually get a extra boost of damage. So that allows Mirror Light to become an extra damage option here. So I'll show that off here in just a second.